No one tells you the past can walk back into your life on its knees. The lobby of Thornton and Blake Investments gleamed like polished silver under the Manhattan sun. It was 8:02 a.m. sharp, and as always, Julian Blake, age 39, sharp suit, sharper instincts, strode in like he owned the world. Because he did, or at least most of the block. A self-made millionaire who'd clawed his way up from a broken neighborhood in Pennsylvania, Julian had it all. A private jet, a penthouse above Central Park, and a name that made boardrooms fall silent. His world was tailored, controlled, clean, until he saw her. She was kneeling by the elevator, scrubbing the marble floor with a blue-gloved hand, hair tied back in a loose bun, gray uniform, ordinary, invisible, until she turned slightly and his breath caught in his throat. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be. But it was. Maya Carter, the girl he once promised the world to, standing in his multi-million-dollar empire, cleaning the floor he walked on. Julian froze mid-step, his heart thudding with the same reckless rhythm it had in the summer of 2005, when he kissed her under a rain-soaked overpass and told her he'd make it big for both of them. But life had other plans. "Mr. Blake?" his assistant called, snapping him back. "Boardroom in 5." He didn't answer. Couldn't. His eyes were still locked on Maya, who hadn't noticed him yet. Or maybe she had and was pretending not to. Julian stepped forward, slowly, hesitantly. "Maya?" She stiffened but didn't look up. "I'll be done in a minute, sir," she said, her voice calm, professional. Cold. The formality hit harder than any boardroom betrayal he'd ever known. "It's me," he said softer. "Julian." Silence. Then she stood, slowly, and turned to face him. Time hadn't erased her features. It had carved them into something stronger, sharper. She wasn't the girl from Cedar Hill anymore. She was a woman who'd lived and hurt. "I know who you are, Mr. Blake," she said evenly. Then, as if it were nothing, she turned back to her mop. Julian just stood there, in his $3,000 shoes, suddenly feeling like a stranger in his own empire. Because what do you do when the love of your life reappears, not as your equal, but as the woman cleaning your floor? Julian didn't remember walking to his office. He barely heard the executive assistant chatter about stock fluctuations or the upcoming investor pitch. None of it mattered. Not when Maya Carter had just looked him in the eye, called him Mr. Blake, and went back to mopping like their entire history meant nothing. But it meant everything, at least to him. He sat at his desk, top floor, corner view, the kind of office most people would kill to see once in their life, and stared blankly at the skyline. 20 years. 20 years of building, climbing, winning. And all it took was one glance to unravel the carefully layered armor he wore every day. She was supposed to be beside him. That was the plan. They had dreamed in sync. Two small-town kids with stars in their eyes. He'd leave for college on a full scholarship, get a degree in finance, then build something real. She would study nursing. They'd meet in the middle, build a life. But somewhere between dorm rooms and deadlines, the letters stopped coming. He still remembered the night he returned to Cedar Hill during winter break. He went straight to her house, flowers in hand, heart racing, only to be met by an empty porch and a "for sale" sign. Her neighbor told him her mother had passed, that Maya had left town without saying goodbye. He never knew why, until now. Because there she was. Not lost, not dead, not unreachable. Just cleaning floors in a building with his name engraved on the elevator panels. He couldn't stay away. By 5:58 p.m., Julian was already at the coffee shop across the street, a quiet place he never noticed before today. Now suddenly the most important location on earth. He wore no tie, rolled up his sleeves, practiced being human again. At 6:05, the door opened. Maya walked in wearing jeans and a simple sweater. Her hair was loose, curling softly at her shoulders. Her eyes scanned the room, then landed on him. No smile, no warmth, just acknowledgement. She sat down across from him. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Julian admitted. "I wasn't sure either," she replied, folding her hands on the table. They ordered coffee. His, black, Hers, 2 sugars, 1 cream. Still the same, but nothing else was. I don't even know where to start, Julian said. Maya didn't answer, just looked at him, quiet and unreadable. I came back for you, he continued. The winter after freshman year. You were gone. You stopped writing, she said simply. I wrote every week. I got 3 letters, then silence. She paused. And then my mother died. I sold the house, got a job, survived. There it was, the unspoken chasm laid bare in a single sentence. Julian exhaled, shaken. I had no idea. That's the thing, Julian, she said quietly. You didn't look hard enough. The words hurt, not because they were cruel, but because they might have been true. I thought you moved on, he said. I told myself maybe I wasn't enough. Her laugh was soft, bitter. You weren't. Not then. Not in the way I needed. They sat in silence, the coffee between them growing cold. You're cleaning floors, he finally said, hating himself the moment the words left his mouth. And you're sitting in a tower with your name on it, she replied, unflinching. We both ended up where we had to. Julian leaned in. But we don't have to stay there. Maya shook her head. This isn't a fairy tale, Julian. There's no magical fix. I'm not 18 anymore. I don't need promises. I need reality. I want to understand your reality, he said, if you'll let me. She looked at him. For the first time, really looked at him. I get off at 6 every day, she said softly. But you already know where to find me. And with that, Maya stood, left a $5 bill on the table, and walked out. Julian didn't stop her, because now he had something he hadn't had in 20 years. A second chance. The next morning, Julian arrived at the office before sunrise. He hadn't slept. Sleep didn't come easy when your past sat across from you in a coffee shop the night before, looking like a ghost you had loved, and maybe still did. His assistant knocked gently. Mr. Blake, the new cleaning crew starts their full rotation today. Should I alert building services about any scheduling issues? Julian stared at her for a long moment before answering. Number. In fact, I'd like to know who assigned the new vendor. She blinked. Sir? I want the file on their contract. Employee roster, too. Yes, of course. I'll bring it up right away. It wasn't paranoia. It was instinct. Something didn't sit right. Maya cleaning his floor wasn't random. It was too coincidental. By lunchtime, the file sat on his desk. The company was small, family-run, hired mostly women with limited education or life setbacks, people who needed a second chance, people like Maya. That evening, Julian found himself in the lower levels of the building, somewhere he hadn't been in years. The break room smelled of lemon cleaner and burnt coffee. He stood in the doorway, out of place in his tailored blazer, watching her tie back her hair. She noticed him in the mirror. You shouldn't be here, Maya said, not unkindly. Just matter of fact. I wanted to see you. Before or after your board meeting, she asked, turning to face him. I rescheduled it. That got her attention. Julian Blake rescheduled a board meeting? I did. He smiled faintly. First time in 10 years. Maya crossed her arms. Why? Because I couldn't focus. Because my head's been stuck in 2005 since I saw you yesterday. Her expression softened for a moment, then hardened again. This changes nothing. Maybe it could, he said gently. Dinner, Thursday. I'll come to you, wherever you feel comfortable. Maya hesitated. Her co-workers were pretending not to listen, but the room had gone noticeably quiet. I don't go to 5-star places, she said. Neither do I. Not this week. She looked at him, searching. Okay, Thursday, but we meet somewhere neutral. The coffee shop, 7 p.m., Julian smiled. Done. Thursday arrived and Julian sat waiting in the same corner booth. He wore a gray sweater and dark jeans. Simple. Forgettable. His heart, however, was anything but calm. When Maya walked in, he stood. She looked nervous but composed, wearing a navy blouse and dark slacks. No makeup, no pretense. You're on time, she noted as she sat. I had something worth being on time for. They ate quietly, letting the silence speak for them until Julian finally broke it. You never got to live the life we talked about. No, she said simply, and yet you survived. I did more than survive, Julian, she said, looking him straight in the eye. I endured. The word hit him like a punch to the ribs. You don't belong in my world, she continued, and I sure as hell don't belong in yours. Julian shook his head. Maybe it's time to make a world that fits us both. Maya stared at him, unmoving, unreadable. Then she whispered, Be careful what you start, Julian, because I don't break easy anymore. Julian had always believed success brought freedom, but now sitting in the glass-walled conference room of his own company, surrounded by polished suits and polite venom, he realized something chilling. Freedom came with a price. The board meeting he had rescheduled earlier in the week was now in full swing, but the numbers on the screen didn't interest him. Not when he could feel the weight of the room pressing down like fog. We're hearing whispers, Julian, said Victor Lin, the CFO, carefully folding his hands, about distractions on the executive floor. Julian arched a brow. Distractions? Victor hesitated, then glanced at the others before continuing. There's talk that you've been associating with a member of the janitorial staff. In the lobby, publicly. The words hung in the air, quiet but slicing. Julian leaned back. Is there a company policy that forbids talking to employees? Not officially, chimed in Nadine, head of legal, but investors watch everything. Optics matter. And what exactly do they see? Julian asked, his voice calm but cold. A CEO speaking to someone with a mop in her hand? They said nothing, because they didn't need to. He already knew the answer. Back in his office, he stared at the city skyline, hands in his pockets. The hypocrisy churned in his chest. These were the same people who applauded him when he donated to charities helping underprivileged women. Yet when he showed interest in one of them up close, they saw it as a liability. That night, he met Maya outside the coffee shop. She noticed the tension immediately. What happened? Nothing, he lied. Maya didn't push. She just looked at him with that same quiet knowing she'd always had. The kind of gaze that could see past walls, suits, bank accounts. As they walked down the avenue, Julian spoke. They're watching, he said softly. The board, the investors, they see you as a problem. I figured, Maya replied, her tone neutral. Does it bother you? Maya stopped walking. But it should bother you. She looked at him, eyes steady. Because once they start calling me a problem, it won't stop there. Julian sighed. Let them. I don't care what they say. She shook her head. You can afford to say that. I can't. Those 7 words wrapped around his ribs like barbed wire. She was right. His reputation might get bruised. Hers could be annihilated. And still, she'd shown up. Come to my place, he said suddenly. Not tonight, just one day. See the world I live in, then decide if you still want to be part of it. Maya hesitated. I already know the answer. Julian smiled faintly. Humor me. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no. As they parted ways, Julian watched her disappear into the subway crowd. Small, quiet, unnoticeable to everyone but him. The world might not see her yet, but he did, and that terrified them. Julian had spent the entire week preparing, not the way he usually did, for a merger, a press conference, or a quarterly review, but for something far more delicate. The evening Maya would finally step into his world. His penthouse apartment was spotless, but not cold. He dimmed the lights, laid out fresh orchids, her favorite, though she hadn't mentioned them since high school, and placed a jazz record on low volume, not to impress, just to make it feel less like a billionaire's fortress and more like a home. At exactly 6:58 p.m., the doorbell rang. When he opened it, Maya stood there in a navy dress, simple, clean, and far too modest for the women who usually entered this space. But she outshone them all. You sure about this? She asked. Julian nodded. Only thing I'm sure about. She stepped inside, her eyes scanning the space, absorbing the polished marble, the skyline view, the curated artwork. She said nothing, but Julian could see it, the quiet tension of someone used to scrubbing spaces like this, not standing in them. This is A lot, she finally said. It's just square footage and expensive furniture, Julian replied. No, she said softly. It's a world, and I don't belong in it. Julian frowned. Don't say that. But Maya didn't argue. She just smiled, bittersweet. They ate dinner on the balcony. He cooked, or tried to. She laughed when he overcooked the salmon, and for a moment it felt like they were 18 again, eating microwave noodles and talking about escaping Cedar Hill. But the spell didn't last, because as Maya reached for her wine, the doorbell rang again. Julian frowned. I wasn't expecting... Before he could finish, the door opened. His assistant's voice filtered in. Ms. Lancaster is here. She said you'd want to see her. Julian stood, confused, and then she appeared. Vanessa Lancaster. Elegant, tall, wrapped in silk and diamond, the kind of woman luxury magazines love to print beside Julian's name. She paused when she saw Maya. Oh, she said, one eyebrow lifting. Didn't realize I was interrupting something domestic. Julian stepped forward. Vanessa, this isn't a good time. I won't stay long. She turned to Maya, offering a smile too polite to be sincere. You must be new. Are you from PR or facilities? Maya stood slowly. Neither, she said. I'm just... a friend. Vanessa's eyes flicked over her dress, then back to Julian. Well, that's refreshing. I'll call you tomorrow, Julian said, already guiding Vanessa toward the door. When he returned, Maya had already picked up her purse. Wait, he said. She thinks I clean your windows, Maya replied, tone flat. She doesn't matter. She is your world, Julian, polished, educated, made for this life. And me? I'm the woman who folds uniforms in her spare time and goes home to a one-room apartment with peeling paint. I don't care. But I do, she snapped, because women like me don't get to make mistakes in rooms like this. We don't get second chances, not unless someone like you gives them to us. And then what? I'm your project? Your redemption arc? Julian's Thermia stared at him, eyes raw but steady. Then prove it, not here, not just with candles and views. Prove it where it counts. She turned and walked to the elevator, heels echoing on cold marble. Julian didn't chase her, but as the doors closed, he whispered to himself, I will. Maya didn't sleep that night. She kept replaying the look in Julian's eyes, the pain, the helplessness, as the elevator doors closed between them. She had told him to prove it, but even as the words left her lips, part of her had wondered, could any man born in marble walls ever understand the weight of concrete ones? By morning, she buried herself in work, vacuumed halls, scrubbed office doors, dumped bins of shredded paper marked confidential. Nothing unusual, just another Tuesday, until lunchtime. That's when she arrived. A woman in a white suit stood waiting at the loading dock, a place no one from the executive floor ever ventured. She was too poised to be security, too confident to be press. Maya Carter? The woman asked, her voice precise as a scalpel. Maya wiped her hands and nodded slowly. My name is Eleanor Ward. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Blake's advisory committee. Maya narrowed her eyes. Advisory committee? Eleanor smiled. We oversee reputational strategy. I'd like to speak with you. Off the record. They met in the back office of the maintenance wing. The break room buzzed with vending machine hums and the smell of instant noodles. Eleanor sat across from her like she was at a five-star negotiation table. We appreciate discretion, Eleanor began smoothly, especially when it concerns Mr. Blake. Maya folded her arms. Is this about last night? It's about the future. Eleanor slid a sleek folder across the table. Inside is a financial offer. Substantial. Enough to finish your degree. Enough to start fresh. Anywhere you'd like. Maya didn't touch the folder. In exchange for what? A clean break. You leave Thornton and Blake quietly. You cease communication with Mr. Blake. No publicity. No drama. Just silence. Maya's chest tightened. You want me to vanish. We want to protect what Julian has built. And frankly, Ms. Carter, this entanglement puts that at risk. For a moment, Maya said nothing. Then she pushed the folder back across the table. You came all the way down here in heels to bribe a janitor? Eleanor didn't flinch. I came down here to prevent a scandal. And you think I'm the scandal? You're the variable, Eleanor said coolly. The question mark. The one thing we can't control. Maya stood slowly, her voice steady but fierce. Tell your committee, I don't take handouts, and I don't vanish on command. Eleanor rose, brushing non-existent lint from her jacket. You're making a mistake, Ms. Carter. No, Maya said. I made that mistake once, when I let someone walk away without a fight. I won't make it again. As Eleanor turned to leave, she paused at the door. Julian Blake is a man of vision, but even visionaries must choose between their hearts and their empires. Then she was gone. Maya stood alone in that dingy break room, surrounded by mop buckets and cracked tiles. She'd been offered a way out, a golden parachute, but she wasn't falling. She was climbing. And if the world thought she didn't belong in Julian Blake's story, then she would rewrite the damn narrative herself. Julian Blake had faced mergers that could topple empires, negotiated with billionaires, walked into rooms where men twice his age called him Sir. But nothing had prepared him for the look on Maya's face when she stormed into his office that afternoon. I thought you were different, she said, her voice quiet, but sharp enough to cut glass. Julian stood from behind his desk. Maya, what's going on? She pulled the sleek folder from her bag and tossed it onto his table. The same folder Eleanor Ward had handed her hours ago. His chest tightened. I didn't approve this, he said immediately, flipping it open. His eyes scanned the offer. The money, the relocation details, the NDA clause. His jaw clenched. I didn't know, he repeated. I swear to you. But you built this world, Julian, Maya said. These are your people. Your name is on the glass, the walls, the elevators, and now on a payoff meant to erase me. I would never— I know, she interrupted, but they would, and that's the problem. Julian moved toward her, slower now. No defense in his eyes, only a question. Why didn't you take it? Maya laughed once, bitter. Because if I was going to disappear, I would have done it years ago. He nodded slowly, absorbing the blow, the truth, the weight of it all. I'm sorry, he said. I should have protected you. No, Maya said softer now. You should have questioned the kind of man you had to become in order to build this kingdom. The room fell into silence. Julian looked around. The custom furnishings, the city skyline, the awards lining the wall. Symbols of his triumph. But now they felt like mirrors reflecting a man he wasn't sure he recognized anymore. Maybe I did lose myself, he admitted, somewhere between chasing success and outrunning failure. He met her eyes again, but I haven't forgotten the boy who saved up for a second-hand ring, the one who stayed up all night helping you study for your nursing exam, the one who believed we could build something real, without glass towers and boardrooms. Maya's eyes softened, but she didn't move. So what now? She asked. Julian took a breath. Now, I start tearing down the pieces of this world that can't hold both of us. And if it all collapses, then I'll start again, he said quietly. But this time, I won't build it without you. The email came on a rainy Thursday morning, hidden between 2 cleaning shift reminders and a utility bill Maya hadn't paid yet. Subject, application update, Hudson Fellowship for Non-Traditional Students. Her thumb hovered over the screen. She had applied months ago. On a dare, really. One of the younger women on the cleaning crew had shoved the flyer into her locker and said, You're smart. Smarter than half these CEOs. Go prove it. Maya didn't believe she had a shot. The program was exclusive. Full scholarship, mentorship, career transition support. They only accepted 5 people a year. Her heart pounded as she opened the message. Dear Ms. Carter, we are thrilled to inform you that you have been selected. The words blurred. She was in. She'd done it. No Julian, no penthouse, no shortcuts. Just her. Her work, her brain, her story. Tears pricked the corners of her eyes as she pressed a trembling hand over her mouth. This wasn't charity. It wasn't a handout. It was the life she'd once given up, returned to her by her own will. That evening, Maya stood alone in her apartment. The rain tapped on the window like a slow drum beat. Her phone buzzed. Julian. She hadn't spoken to him since the day she threw the folder on his desk and told him to look in the mirror. She almost didn't answer. but something in her chest ached. She picked up. "Hey," he said. "Hey, I heard about the fellowship from Nadine. She's not good at secrets." Maya smiled softly. "I just found out. I'm proud of you." "Thanks." Silence stretched between them, soft and fragile. "You're going to take it, right?" he asked. "I'd be crazy not to." "You're not crazy," Julian said. "You're finally being seen for who you are." There was another pause, then, "Can I ask something selfish?" Maya hesitated. "What?" "If you take it, does that mean you'll be gone?" She exhaled. "It means I'll be in Boston, full-time, studying, training, rebuilding." He was quiet. "I won't ask you to stay," he said finally. "I meant what I said. I won't be the man who pulls you away from your future." She nodded, though he couldn't see it. "But I'll come visit," he added quickly, as if hope had cracked through the final wall. "If that's okay." "It's okay," Maya whispered. "And when you're done, when you've built the life you deserve, if there's room for me in it." He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Maya blinked back tears. "You'll always have a seat at my table," she said softly, "but I need to build the table first." A week later, she boarded a train to Boston. No limousine, no designer luggage, just a canvas bag, a stack of notebooks, and a future she had carved with her own hands. Julian didn't come to the station, but there was a note folded in her bag, slipped in sometime between their last call and her departure. "You reminded me who I was before the world handed me power. If you can rebuild your life from nothing, so can I. I'm tearing down the empire. I'll write to you when I'm done with the ruins. Until then, Jay." Maya folded the note, tucked it close to her chest, and watched the city disappear behind her. She wasn't running from anything. She was running toward herself. Julian Blake had always believed the hardest battle he'd fight would be out there, in boardrooms, in the press, against cutthroat competitors. He was wrong, because the real war was inside. It started small. He dissolved 3 contracts tied to firms with histories of labor exploitation. He implemented new internal policies to protect low-wage workers, starting with the janitorial staff. He replaced the board's Reputation Advisory Committee. To some, it looked like reform. To others, it looked like weakness. "You're burning the house down to impress a woman who scrubbed your lobby," Victor Lynn snapped, slamming the folder onto the table. Julian met his CFO's eyes without blinking. "I'm tearing down the parts of this house that were built on rot." Victor leaned back, jaw clenched. "You think this place runs on morality? Wake up. It runs on power. And Maya Carter, whatever fantasy you have about her, she doesn't belong in this world." Julian stood slowly. "Then maybe this world doesn't deserve to keep running." The room fell into silence. Victor didn't argue. He just smiled. And that chilled Julian more than shouting ever could. A few days later, Maya was adjusting to her new life in Boston. The lectures were intense, the expectations higher than anything she'd ever faced. But for the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible until she received a letter. It arrived in a plain envelope with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "He's slipping. Fast. You broke him. Come back and you'll finish the job. Or stay away and let him recover. Your choice. But if you love him, disappear." There was no signature, but she knew the tone. It wasn't from Julian. It was from someone who didn't want him healed. It was from someone who preferred Julian broken, obedient, and controlled. Maya's hands trembled as she folded the letter. She didn't cry. Not this time. She just picked up her phone and texted a number she hadn't used in days. "Maya, did you send someone after me?" The reply came instantly. "Julian." "What are you talking about?" She sent a photo of the letter. 10 seconds later, her phone rang. He sounded breathless. "Maya, I swear to you, I didn't send that. And whoever did, they're going to regret it." She believed him, but belief wasn't enough anymore. Because now she knew not everyone wanted her back. Not because of who she was, but because of what she represented. Change. And to men like Victor Lynn, change was a threat. That night, Julian walked into his office and found Victor pouring whiskey into 2 glasses. Thought you might want a drink, Victor said casually. Julian didn't sit. You sent her that letter, didn't you? Victor raised his glass, smiling. I did what your board didn't have the spine to do. Julian's voice dropped. You're done here. Victor chuckled. You think you can fire me and still keep your company? I am this company. Julian stepped closer, calm and lethal. Number, this company is what I built, but it will never be what you tried to keep. He took Victor's glass, poured it into the sink, and left the office without looking back. Because for the first time in his life, Julian Blake wasn't afraid to burn it all down. 3 months passed, 3 seasons of silence, 3 cities apart, 3 lives transformed. Maya stood at the foot of the marble steps leading into the new Thornton and Blake Foundation. Not a corporate tower this time, but a community hub built in one of the neighborhoods Julian used to avoid putting on his investment map. Now he funded literacy programs there, healthcare clinics, women's career centers, because something in him had changed, or rather, someone had reminded him of who he used to be. Inside the atrium, Maya walked slowly, eyes taking in the tall glass walls now covered in local student artwork, the absence of security turnstiles, the sound of laughter echoing down the hall instead of polished silence. And then she saw him, not at a podium, not in a suit, not holding a glass of champagne or closing a deal. Julian Blake was crouched beside a group of teenagers, handing out folders, his sleeves rolled up, a pencil tucked behind one ear. He looked up, and he froze. Maya smiled. You didn't write, she said. He stood, stunned. I didn't know if I still had the right to. You didn't, she replied gently, but you earned it back. They stared at each other, not as strangers, not as regret, but as equals. How's Boston? He asked. Life-changing, she said, and terrifying, but I'm still standing. You look different. I am. A pause. Are you here for good? He asked, hopeful. I'm here to see, she answered, to feel, to decide. He nodded, emotion flickering behind his eyes. I dismantled everything, Maya, he said. Not for you, not just. For me. Because you were right. I had become someone I wouldn't have trusted at 17. She stepped closer. And now? Now, he smiled faintly. I think I'm ready to build something real. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the pavement. A breeze swept through the open lobby, fluttering the foundation banner like a quiet revolution. Maya turned to him. You know what scares me? She whispered. What? That we'll mess it up again. We will, he said, without hesitation. But this time, we'll know how to fix it. And just like that, without fireworks or declarations, she leaned into his shoulder, not to collapse, but to stand together, side by side, not as rescuer and rescued, not as rich and poor, not as past and present, but as 2 people, beginning again. If you felt something during this story, if Maya's quiet courage or Julian's late awakening spoke to you, don't forget to like this video. It tells us you want more stories like this one. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next tale where power meets conscience and where love doesn't arrive perfect, but arrives anyway. And remember, sometimes the most powerful stories aren't the loudest. They're the ones whispered between 2 people who choose to rebuild. See you in the next video.